Sarah Chen hadn't expected anything unusual during her regular night shift at Harborview Medical Center. Seattle's rainy season was in full swing, and the emergency department had been quiet except for the occasional drunk tourist who couldn't handle their brewery tour. The most excitement she'd had was resuscitating Mrs. Patterson's cat after it ate an entire chocolate cake. The first sign that this night would be different came at 3:47 a.m. when the power fluctuated in the old wing of the hospital. Sarah was doing her rounds, checking on the backup generators, standard procedure during storm season. The fluorescent lights flickered like dying fireflies, casting strange shadows on the worn linoleum floors. That's when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong in any hospital, a high-pitched frequency that made her teeth ache and her skin prickle. It wasn't the usual chorus of medical equipment or the hum of ancient heating systems. This sound felt wrong, like listening to a violin being played underwater. Following the sound led her to the abandoned rehabilitation wing, closed for renovations that the hospital board kept postponing. The door was ajar, which was strange because it should have been locked. Sarah's hand hesitated on her radio. Protocol said she should call security, but something made her pause. The sound stopped abruptly, replaced by what could only be described as breathing. If breathing sounded like wind through crystal chimes, Sarah's medical training kicked in, overriding her fear. Someone or something was in distress. "Hello," she called out, switching on her flashlight. "I'm a paramedic. If you need help, I'm here to assist." The response came not in words, but in a burst of bioluminescence that turned the dark corridor into an aurora borealis. Huddled in the corner was a figure that challenged everything Sarah thought she knew about anatomy. The being was tall, easily 7 feet, with translucent skin that pulsed with patterns of light. Where there should have been hair, delicate tendrils moved like seaweed in an invisible current. But what caught Sarah's attention wasn't the alien appearance, it was the obvious signs of trauma. Dark fluid leaked from what appeared to be wounds, and the creature's light patterns were irregular, flickering like a faulty neon sign. "I'm going to approach slowly," Sarah said, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'm here to help. Can you understand me?" The being's tendrils rippled, and a small device near what Sarah assumed was its throat sparked and fizzled. A voice emerged, broken and synthetic. "Help. Dying. Hunted." Sarah's mind raced through her options. The logical part of her brain screamed to call this in. This was way above her pay grade. But her instincts, the same ones that had helped her save countless lives over her career, told her something different. This wasn't just a medical emergency. It was a plea for sanctuary. "I'm going to examine you now," she said, pulling on a pair of gloves. "Can you tell me what happened?" The translator crackled again. "Escape pod. Crashed. Need. Specific elements. To survive." As Sarah got closer, she could see that the beam's translucent skin was becoming cloudy in patches, like ice forming on a window. The bioluminescent patterns were growing dimmer. Whatever this creature needed, they were running out of time. "What elements?" Sarah asked, already mentally cataloging the hospital's supplies. "What can I do?" The alien's tendrils reached out, touching Sarah's tablet. Instantly, the screen lit up with a complex molecular diagram. It wasn't any compound Sarah recognized, but something about the structure seemed familiar. "Like your copper, but more," the translator managed before sparking out completely. Sarah's mind raced back to her biochemistry classes. Copper was essential for human blood cell formation, but this structure was more complex. The hospital's lab might have something similar, but accessing it without authorization would mean risking her job. Maybe even worse. The beam's lights flickered again, weaker this time. Sarah made her decision. She'd become a paramedic to save lives, and she wasn't about to let bureaucracy or fear stop her now, even if that life came from another world. "Hold on," she said, squeezing what she hoped was the alien's hand. "I'm going to help you. Just stay with me." The answering pulse of light was faint but clear, trust and hope transcending the barriers of species and space. As Sarah ran toward the lab, her footsteps echoing through the empty corridors, she realized that this night would change not just her life, but potentially humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. What she didn't know yet was that she had just become part of something much larger than a simple rescue, something that would challenge her oath as a healer, her loyalty as a citizen, and her very understanding of what it meant to be human. The hospital lab was dark except for the soft glow of equipment standby lights. Sarah's keycard worked on the first try, but her hands shook as she entered. In 15 years of emergency medicine, she'd never done anything like this. Breaking into the lab, stealing supplies. This wasn't just against protocol, it was probably illegal on multiple levels. The alien's molecular diagram glowed on her tablet screen, its complex structure mocking her rushed efforts to understand it. Sarah had always been good at improvising medical solutions, but this was like trying to build a spacecraft with stone tools. She grabbed copper sulfate solutions, rare earth elements, anything that might match the complex compound the alien needed. Her radio crackled. "Chen, what's your location? We got reports of power fluctuations in the old wing." Sarah grabbed a handful of testing supplies before responding. "Just checking the backup systems. Everything's fine." The lie felt bitter in her mouth, but what was she supposed to say? "Sorry, just raiding the lab to save a dying alien." When she returned to the rehabilitation wing, she found the alien had moved, pressing itself against the wall as if trying to merge with the shadows. Its bioluminescent patterns had dimmed further, now barely visible beneath its increasingly opaque skin. "I'm back," Sarah announced softly. "I've got some options we can try." The alien's translator remained dead, but its tendrils reached toward her in a gesture that seemed both grateful and desperate. Sarah laid out her stolen supplies, trying to remember everything she knew about xenobiology, which was basically nothing, because it hadn't exactly been covered in paramedic training. "Okay," she muttered, "let's start with the basics." She pulled out a portable spectrometer from her medical kit. It wasn't designed for this kind of analysis, but it might help identify what the alien's body was trying to process. The first solution she tried, a simple copper sulfate mixture, caused the alien to convulse, its skin flickering with patterns that somehow managed to convey distress without words. Sarah quickly administered a neutralizing agent, her heart pounding. She was working blind, and one mistake could kill her patient. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but we'll figure this out." Hours passed in a blur of trial and error. Sarah mixed compounds, monitored reactions, and prayed that nobody would investigate the old wing too closely. The alien remained conscious but growing weaker, its attempts to help through gestures becoming more sluggish. Dawn was approaching when Sarah finally noticed something. The alien's skin seemed to react differently to solutions containing rare earth elements, particularly when combined with copper. The patterns of light would briefly strengthen before fading again. Not a cure, but definitely a response. She was preparing another mixture when her tablet chimed with a hospital-wide alert. Her blood ran cold as she read the message. "AT-ENT Lion all STAFF. Security sweep of all wings following unauthorized lab access. Report any suspicious activity immediately." Sarah looked at her patient, then at the scattered evidence of her theft. They'd check here eventually, and there would be no way to explain this. The alien seemed to sense her distress, its tendrils reaching out to touch her arm. The contact sent a strange tingling sensation through her skin, and suddenly her tablet screen began to change. New information appeared, complex chemical formulas and molecular structures far beyond anything in the hospital's database. The alien was somehow sharing knowledge directly, bypassing the need for words. Sarah stared in amazement as she began to understand. What the alien needed wasn't just elements, but a specific crystalline structure that could serve as a temporary substitute for its own failing cellular matrix. But creating it would take more than what she had stolen from the lab. She'd need specialized equipment, more supplies, and most importantly, time. All things that were quickly running out as footsteps echoed in the distant corridors. Sarah made another decision. "We can't stay here," she said, beginning to gather their supplies. "I have a place. It's not much, but it has what we need. Can you move?" The alien's response was to slowly rise, its towering form unsteady but determined. Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the trust this being was placing in her, a trust she prayed she deserved. As they prepared to leave through the service entrance, Sarah caught her reflection in a darkened window. The face that looked back at her was different somehow, changed by the knowledge that humanity wasn't alone, and by the weight of the choice she was making. She was no longer just Sarah Chen, paramedic. She was now something else, a bridge between worlds, a keeper of secrets, and possibly a traitor to her own species. The sound of security radio chatter grew closer. Sarah led her alien patient toward the exit, knowing that every step took her further from the safe, predictable life she'd known. But as the being's tendrils gently squeezed her shoulder in gratitude, she realized that some paths, once taken, could never be untaken, and some truths, once known, could never be unknown. Sarah's apartment wasn't meant to be a laboratory. The small second bedroom she used for storage had been hastily converted into a makeshift medical bay, with equipment borrowed, stolen, her conscience reminded her, from the hospital. The alien, who had managed to repair its translator enough to communicate its name, Lyra, lay on a reinforced table, its bioluminescence now barely visible. "The solution is stabilizing your cellular structure," Sarah said, checking readings on a modified medical scanner. "But it's not a permanent fix." "Time. Bought." Lyra's translator crackled. "But they... coming." Sarah paused in her work. It was the third time Lyra had mentioned pursuers, but she'd been too focused on keeping the alien alive to ask details. "Who's coming, Lyra? Who are you running from?" The answer came in a burst of images projected directly into Sarah's mind. A skill Lyra had been slowly regaining as their makeshift treatments took effect. Sarah saw massive ships, dark and angular, prowling through star systems like predators. She saw worlds quarantined, species catalogued and controlled under the guise of protection. And she saw Lyra's people, the luminary, being systematically contained for their unique abilities to interface with technology. "The preservers," Lyra explained, the translator working better now. "They believe themselves guardians of galactic order. Any species with capabilities they deem problematic is subject to oversight." "Oversight?" Sarah's hands clenched. "You mean imprisonment." "For our own good, they claim. My escape was unprecedented. They will not allow it to stand." As if summoned by the words, Sarah's tablet suddenly flickered with interference. Outside, car alarms began blaring up and down the street. Lyra's tendrils writhed in agitation, patterns of warning flashing across its skin. "They're here," Lyra whispered. Sarah rushed to the window. Through the pre-dawn fog, she could see 3 black vehicles moving slowly down the street. They looked like government SUVs, but something about them was off. The way they moved, too smooth and synchronized. As she watched, a figure stepped out of one vehicle. From a distance, it looked human, but its movements were wrong, like someone who had learned human behavior from a manual. "Your world is not yet ready for official contact," Lyra explained urgently. "The preservers will maintain their cover, appear as your authorities, but they will find me, and anyone who has helped me will be processed." Sarah's mind raced. Her apartment wasn't safe anymore. Nowhere in the city would be. The preservers would have technology to track Lyra's unique biology. They needed to move, but Lyra was still too weak to travel far, and the temporary treatment required regular maintenance. A sharp knock at her door made them both freeze. "Federal agents," a voice called out. "We're conducting an investigation into unusual energy signatures in this area." Sarah looked at Lyra, whose lights had dimmed to near invisibility. The knock came again, harder this time. "Miss Chen, we know you're inside. Your cooperation will make this easier for everyone." Moving quickly, Sarah grabbed her emergency bag, already packed with medical supplies and the specialized compounds Lyra needed. "Is there a back way out?" Lyra asked. "Better," Sarah replied, moving to her closet. "I grew up in this building. There's an old maintenance shaft that connects to the basement of the next building over. My father used to be the superintendent." The door lock began to turn. They were overriding it somehow. Sarah helped Lyra up, supporting the alien's weakened frame. "But we need a destination," she said. "Somewhere to go." Lyra's tendrils touched Sarah's tablet one last time, inputting coordinates. "There are others," the alien said. "Other humans who have helped my kind. A network, if we can reach them." The door burst open just as Sarah and Lyra disappeared into the hidden passage. Sarah heard footsteps entering her apartment, followed by a voice that sounded almost human but not quite. "Quarantine protocol initiated. Begin full spectrum scan." As they made their way through the dark maintenance shaft, Sarah's mind whirled with implications. A network of humans helping alien refugees. How many others had made the same choice she had? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, how had they managed to stay hidden from these preservers? They emerged into the basement of the neighboring building just as dawn was breaking. Sarah could hear the sound of more vehicles arriving above. Soon the whole block would be crawling with these fake federal agents. They needed transportation, supplies, and a way to contact this mysterious network. "Sarah," Lyra said softly, tendrils gently touching her arm. "You can still walk away. Return to your life. The preservers might believe you were coerced or unaware." Sarah thought about her career, her family, everything she'd be leaving behind. Then she thought about what she'd seen in Lyra's memories. Worlds under quarantine. Species living in fear of being deemed too problematic to remain free. "I took an oath to help those in need," she replied firmly. It never specified which planet they had to be from. Lyra's skin brightened briefly with patterns that conveyed gratitude and respect. Together, they slipped out of the basement into the awakening city. Above them, dark ships disguised as helicopters began crisscrossing the Seattle skyline, and Sarah knew that somewhere in this city, someone was waiting to help them, if they could just stay free long enough to make contact. The hunt was on, and humanity's first real test in the galactic community had begun, not with grand diplomatic meetings or official first contact, but with one paramedic's choice to help a stranger from the stars. The coordinates Lyra had provided led them to an unlikely sanctuary, a 24-hour laundromat in one of Seattle's oldest neighborhoods. Rain drummed steadily on the worn awning as Sarah helped Lyra through the door, the alien's tall form hunched and hidden beneath a borrowed medical examiner's coat. The place seemed deserted except for an elderly woman folding clothes in the corner. She barely glanced at them as they entered, but Sarah noticed how her hands moved, not really folding, but making specific patterns with the fabric. A signal. "The dryer in the back," Lyra whispered, her translator now modified to be barely audible. "Third from the left. Enter the sequence I showed you." Sarah approached the machine, trying to look casual as she input a series of numbers into the digital display, numbers that corresponded to positions of stars in Lyra's home system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the floor beneath them began to move. The entire back section of the laundromat, including 3 dryers and the floor beneath them, descended like an elevator. The elderly woman continued folding clothes above as they sank into darkness. They emerged into what looked like an abandoned subway station, repurposed into something between a medical bay and a refugee center. Advanced technology Sarah had never seen before blended seamlessly with ordinary Earth equipment. And there were aliens, at least a dozen of them, of various species, some humanoid and others completely foreign to any earthly conception of life. A woman in her 50s approached them, her dark skin lined with age, but her movements precise and purposeful. "I'm Dr. Maya Patel," she said, "former NASA exobiologist, current operator of this way station. Welcome to the underground." "Sarah Chen," Sarah replied, still processing the scene around her. "I'm a paramedic." And this is a luminary, Dr. Patel finished, nodding to Lyra. We received the quantum burst when your pod crashed. We've been trying to locate you before the preservers did. She turned to Sarah. You did well keeping her alive. The crystalline matrix treatment was particularly impressive for someone working with Earth technology. How long has this been happening? Sarah asked, watching as medical staff, both human and alien, moved efficiently through the station. How many people know? Longer than you'd think, Dr. Patel replied, leading them to a treatment area. The first contact wasn't Roswell or any other famous incident. It was a nurse in Chicago who found an injured alien in 1891. She hid them in her basement and treated them with period medical knowledge. When others came looking for their lost companion, they found not just their friend, but a human ally. That's how it started. Another voice joined in. A young man with cybernetic implants visible at his temples stepped forward, one act of kindness leading to another. A network built on trust and the simple idea that compassion doesn't stop at species boundaries. I'm Alex Rivera, communications specialist. While they talked, medical staff began treating Lyra with equipment far more sophisticated than Sarah's improvised solutions. The alien's bioluminescence strengthened visibly, patterns becoming clearer and more complex. The preservers, Sarah said, watching the treatment. They're on the surface now. How do you stay hidden? Multiple ways, Alex explained, tapping his implants. We've got tech that can mask energy signatures, scramble their scanners. Some of it's reverse engineered from their own equipment, some of it's unique to Earth. Turns out humans are pretty good at finding ways around rules we don't agree with. But it's getting harder, Dr. Patel added grimly. The preservers are increasing their presence. They know something's helping refugees escape their protection. They just haven't figured out it's us yet. A screen on the wall flickered to life, showing news footage from downtown. The federal agents were expanding their search, setting up checkpoints. Their human disguises were perfect, but Sarah could now see the subtle wrongness in their movements. They're looking for a pattern. Lyra spoke up from the treatment bed, her voice stronger. My escape exposed a flaw in their system. If they can find me, trace how I survived. They might find all of us. Dr. Patel finished. Every station, every refugee, every human ally. We're not just hiding people now. We're hiding hope. The hope that different species can help each other without oversight or control. Sarah watched the news footage, then looked around at the underground sanctuary. Humans and aliens working together, healing together, proving that cooperation was possible without the preserver's brutal form of order. She thought about her old life, about the comfortable predictability she'd left behind just days ago. What can I do? She asked. How can I help? Dr. Patel smiled. We need medical personnel who can think on their feet, adapt to new situations. Your work with Lyra proved you can do both. But more than that, we need people who understand that sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same. The question, Alex added, is whether you're ready to commit to this life. Once you're fully in, there's no going back. The preservers don't believe in second chances. Sarah looked at Lyra, who had risen from the treatment bed, her tall form now glowing with renewed strength. The alien's tendrils moved in a pattern that Sarah was beginning to recognize as determination. They're already looking for me, Sarah said, and I took an oath to help those in need. Seems to me the only way forward is through. Alarms suddenly blared through the station. Alex's implants flickered as he accessed the security feeds. We've got movement topside. Multiple preserver units converging on this sector. They must have detected something. Dr. Patel moved quickly to a control panel. Time to show you what a full evacuation looks like, Sarah. Welcome to the Resistance. The evacuation protocols of the underground station were a symphony of organized chaos. Aliens of various species moved through hidden passages, while human staff wiped computers and activated emergency transport systems. Above them, the laundromat security feeds showed preserver agents converging on the building. Their scanners are picking up trace quantum signatures, Alex reported, his cybernetic implants flickering rapidly. The dampening field isn't holding. Dr. Patel's fingers flew across a control panel. We need 10 minutes to complete the evacuation. Resources like this station take years to build. We can't let them find it intact. Sarah watched as Lyra interfaced directly with the station's systems, her tendrils connecting with access ports. The preservers are using a new scanning frequency, the alien reported, one they developed after my escape. They're learning, adapting. Then we adapt faster, Sarah said, an idea forming. Lyra, you said your people can interface with technology. Could you project your quantum signature somewhere else? Create a decoy. Lyra's patterns shifted in what Sarah now recognized as deep thought. Yes, but it would require a significant power source, and someone would need to carry the projector. The preservers would follow it, thinking they're tracking me. I'll do it, Sarah said immediately. I can take one of the emergency vehicles, leave them away from the station. Absolutely not, Dr. Patel cut in. The preservers will realize it's a decoy eventually. Whoever carries it would be caught. Not if they have backup. Alex stepped forward, his implants glowing. My enhancements can mask the difference between real and projected signatures for a while, long enough to matter. The building shook as preserver vehicles landed on the street above. Time was running out. This isn't just about one station anymore, Sarah insisted. Every time they upgrade their technology, every time they get closer to finding us, more refugees will die. We need to show them that their control isn't absolute, that there will always be people willing to fight back. Lyra moved to Sarah, tendrils gently touching her face. A flood of images passed between them, memories of their short time together, the trust they'd built, the barriers they'd broken. You've already done more than enough, Lyra said softly. No, Sarah replied. I've just started. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Lyra and Alex worked together to modify a quantum projector, while Dr. Patel coordinated the final stages of evacuation. Sarah changed into tactical gear that could help mask her life signs from preserver scanners. The projector is keyed to my signature, Lyra explained, handing Sarah a small device. They will believe you are me, but once they realize the deception, they'll be too busy chasing us to stop the evacuation. Sarah finished. She looked at Alex, ready for a ride. The young man grinned, his implants pulsing with anticipation. Always wanted to be in a high-speed chase with alien law enforcement. Dr. Patel handed them both emergency transponders. These will lead you to another station once you've drawn them far enough away. Don't try to be heroes. Just buy us time. The ceiling shook again as heavy footsteps moved through the laundromat above. Sarah could hear the artificial voices of the preservers, their almost human tones sending chills down her spine. Go, Lyra said, her patterns displaying a mix of worry and pride. And Sarah, thank you for showing me that sometimes the most advanced civilizations have the most to learn from younger ones. Sarah smiled, activating the quantum projector. Thank you for showing me that the universe is bigger than I imagined, but humanity's capacity for compassion can grow to match it. She and Alex rushed to the emergency vehicle bay, while the last evacuees disappeared through various escape tunnels. As they climbed into a modified electric car, Sarah caught one last glimpse of Lyra being led to a different exit. The alien's patterns formed what Sarah now knew was the luminary symbol for hope. The car shot up a hidden ramp, emerging in an alley 2 blocks from the laundromat. Immediately, they heard the high-pitched whine of preserver scanners zeroing in on their location, ready to show these advanced civilizations what humans can do. Sarah asked, hands tight on the wheel. Alex's implants interfaced with the car's systems, optimizing their route. Born ready. Let's give them something to preserve. As they sped through the pre-dawn streets of Seattle, preserver vehicles in hot pursuit, Sarah thought about the choice she'd made in that hospital corridor just days ago. She'd followed her oath as a healer, her instincts as a human being, and in doing so had become part of something greater than herself. The quantum projector hummed beside her, broadcasting Lyra's signature across the city. Behind them, the underground station would be evacuating its last refugees, wiping its systems, and disappearing back into the hidden spaces between what humanity thought it knew and what was really out there. Sarah Chen, once just a night shift paramedic, now drove through her city with alien law enforcement on her tail and the fate of countless refugees in her hands. She was no longer an observer in humanity's secret first steps into a larger galaxy. She was a participant, a protector, a rebel against those who would control rather than connect. The sun began to rise over Seattle's skyline, its light catching the sleek black forms of the pursuing preserver vehicles. Sarah smiled. Sometimes the greatest adventures, the most important choices, the real first contacts, didn't happen in grand government buildings or military bases. Sometimes they happened in hospital corridors, laundromats, and city streets, one act of kindness at a time.